Why? Hello. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Hello. How's it going? Tonight or yeah, actually, it's probably the night if we're watching this. So this, I made a promise to read a little something. I actually didn't promise it. I just sort of suggested that I would. But you know, might as well go with it. Okay. Ahem. A king amongst men, a great legend and mythical beast descended from the heavens toward the decrepit world. He roared out to all the lands of the earth a battle cry so profound it made all the many peoples of the earth quake in their adornments. His divinity was clear to those who heard him in one of these lands. The words spoke to these people, and upon them would follow him as a leader. The word that spoke so deeply to these people were gamers unite. After this, he would ascend to a position heavily adorned and proclaim his decrees as dictator of the Equestrian Game Club. He would bring more peoples into his legion and prophecies a future without scorn for his followers. He laid out a plan for this new future they were going to build together. He said that the future wouldn't involve himself, for he would ascend to a greater level. However, he had a plan for his followers to allow them to continue his works in his absence. So his followers were always eager to please. Would throw themselves into making themselves leadership worthy in his absence. I haven't actually read this whole thing, so I make no promises with the script accuracy. Yeah. He hadn't said how he would bestow. You know what? I could pause this for 1 second. Sorry. Just had to breathe in the full extent of this manuscript. Where was I? Here we are. He hadn't said how he would bestow this honorific dictator. However, it was clear to the fellow members, who were the contenders. In the time, there was a push towards different forms of organization from those in the organization. Some would even publicly leverage the prospect of democracy as a way to gain legitimacy in the new system that was being set up. Two main contenders would make a cabal amongst themselves and decided whoever it ended up being that they would share in the rewards of the title. The next leader was named as Sir Derveltier of the Maximilian Cooper clan. He had entered a power-sharing agreement with Sir Nelson of the Robert Preston family, who he gave powers over the mass media machines of the Order. I don't know if the microphone picked up on that part. The Order had been set up with term limits by very nature, allowing those in power to ascend to the next level. After some time, the two who originally had gotten power would then pass on the honorific themselves to the next generation, as this is. This next generation, however, was irresponsible and lost their way. The Order would soon fall into a sinful counter-nature of the expectations the original leader had made. The very freedom for his chosen people that he had gifted from the gods would be taken away, and the Order had made with the express purpose of lose its soul. The generation shall not be named for their heinous crimes, which amount far too high to be forgivable. The old guard and some of the past descended would come back to mount a counter-revolution to at least preserve as a monument what the great leader had made. They would be rebuffed, however, because the old guard had been made small, and the ascended no longer held legitimately legitimacy in their ancestral lands. Anyway, they would flee to a new place, setting up a new order to attain a slight sliver of the previous glory the leader had attended. However, there's a problem. In this new land, the Ascended and Old Guard had decided they would honor the honorific of the dictator by gifting it to everyone. One of the Old Guard, who disliked the disorder caused by this new power structure, would try to control it with his own hands. As a protest of this heavy-handed measurement, an Ascended member named Ben would create more chaos and try to prove the futile nature of the measure being enacted. This member, however, didn't get the subtle message which made Preston step in to help Ben. Eventually, the heavy-handed measure became reprisal for assumed slights from Ben and Preston. As a measure to attempt to try and stop the reprisals, Preston would give this unnamed one an ultimatum. This unnamed one would call this as a bluff because of the most heavy-handed reprisal to date, and Preston was forced on honor of his word to follow through. Am I in the right place? I think I am. So. Okay. The temple ended up being mostly nuked over and over by the unnamed one until Preston finished it off when fulfilling his threat. Preston would take... Okay, you can tell that this is like... not good. Anyway, where was I? Over the went until Preston finished it off when fulfilling his threat. Preston would take the rebuilding of a new temple into his own hands and use the old power system from the previous temple. He would, however, punish the unnamed one for his transgressions, making him unequal to the others. Eventually, he would elevate Owen above all others. After he felt he deserved the title again, he would then work on a device to allow for the soft control of the new system through a points-based system. This was met with Johnny, a newly ascended, to create his own devices to exert his own form of control. I'm gonna restart this. It seems we've run out of time in the video, so I'm gonna... There we go, bada blam. Preston would respond by a more overt display of power after Johnny's more overt display from his device. Johnny would, on a whim, send a mass notification out to everyone who was a member of this new order at 3 a.m. This would give Ben an idea to create his own form of device. This one would push mass notifications out at breakneck speed to everyone continuously at 3 a.m. in the morning. This caused Preston to respond by making his own divine intervention to try and resort some semblance of order to help protect the other members. However, the damage was already done. The bot wars, as they would end up being called, would cause the most casualties of any conflict within the Ascended thus far. Ben would end up using the power he had amassed in secrecy to destroy divine intervention and win the bot wars conclusively. Preston, upon seeing the writing on the wall, would leverage his last shreds of legitimacy within the ancient lands to regain control of the original temple. He would set it up as a monument to preserve the legacy of their great leader. Meanwhile, Owen... Is the mic still going? Yep, looks like it. Okay, just double check. Meanwhile, Owen would take charge and convene the group at a holy spot that was once touched by our first leader. During this time in the holy spot, there were ways to gain wealth, and the Ascended ones would compete to see who would gain the most. However, tragically, our Lord would speak from the heavens and tell us that the holy grounds would be no more. Preston decided in order to honor his heavenly great leader, he must bring his old followers back to the temple from the ancient grounds he had inherited. He wanted to preserve the history However, he knew that the history that he wished to preserve was worth less than using the temple of the order. The group went back to their roots, and there were once more the Equestrian Game Club. Everyone was happy enough with the way the old temple was run, with the traditional values of the Equestrian Game Club being preserved. However, one day, Ben and Cooper lost their ways. Spoiled from the new orders, they felt for some reason they lacked real power. In their hubris, they were caused the great collapsing of the holiest of temples because they demanded freedom from what they saw was an undeserving dictator of Preston. They stroke out like spoiled children, complaining about their inability to allocate funds to do as they pleased, edited. They wanted to edit the very nature of the temple, corrupting it from its original form and blaspheming from our great Lord's intent. They had lost their ways and fallen into their own backwardness. Preston decided that the history that would be lost by acquiescing to their demands was worth the lesson it would teach them. He would set up a democracy modeled off of the original concept from way back when, during the beginnings of the Equestrian Game Club, before the great leader ascended. He then gave the power of dictator to the people who would choose. To choose who was deserving of power. The people unused to such social responsibility would doom the server, giving power to the hands of the notorious arsonist Johnny. He would single-handedly nuke the whole temple to the group and make it impossible for anyone to subvert his authority. Luckily, Preston had planned for this eventuality and used a backdoor to regain control. He would then use his newfound emergency powers to reorganize the ancient traditions into a new form. Preston would change the dictator of old into a president to do Ben and Cooper not learning their lesson. He decided if he wouldn't be allowed to be dictator, no one would be allowed to be dictator. Everyone else, in Preston's opinion, had proven they couldn't be trusted with it. Cooper wouldn't act when he was called upon. Cameron would repress valid expression. Ben would be corrupted by the power. Johnny was an arsonist, Haddam was sadistic, Owen was like Cameron, and unfortunately, Drew had ascended beyond our plane. Preston thought if the people felt that he shouldn't have power, then nobody should. He would give in to the people's blaspheme to protect them from themselves, but he wouldn't be giving his power away to anyone else. That's the story up until this point. The world hangs on the balance between insanity and the peace the chosen people deserve. Will the forces of chaos or justice win? Only time will tell. Absolutely tear-jerking and heart-rending. But, I do have a bit of problems with this, and I'll be making some edits to this right away, and I'll be back when that happens.
Credible kill on Johnny's part. Oh, and it looks like Owen.
Okay. So, problems with this version of history. Okay, so first of all, the current score, it's kind of looking interesting, it might be rigged, to be honest, but we'll see how it pans out in the end. The lighting on this is horrible, by the way. So first, A King Amongst Men. I gotta give points for that because it's a pretty funny reference to the popular hit game Amongst People. So wrote out to all the lands of the earth. Really, we have no proof that he wrote it to any land that wasn't within the confines of the high school known as Faith Bible. He'd bring more peoples to his legion and prophesies. Okay. It's kind of an interesting word choice. I think I'm gonna put these on screen so you can read them yourself. So laziness for the win, even though it's later, more work later. So later on, they mention Nelson of the Robert Preston family, and they also mentioned Sir Dervaltier of the Maximilian Cooper clan. And not many people know this. There's actually a third one. It's kind of the Jacob Delzer clan. It's kind of obscure because he literally did nothing throughout the entire tenure, but yeah. The order soon followed the blah, 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 blah. The very freedom for his chosen people that he had gifted from the gods would be taken away. Now keep this part in mind later, because it's a kind of interesting because of what we know, how we know the story ended. Yeah. So, one paragraph, the entire paragraph, it's kind of interesting because it doesn't really specify anything, and also I don't remember what it's referring to, if it's referring to anything kind of important. Yeah. So here he mentions like some unnamed threat, the unnamed person who nuked the entire server. Game theory here, it's probably Owen because we have evidence, first of all, and second of all, the evidence that we have is also right here because Preston may have made a little slip up and said Owen over here. But even if he was referring to two different people, then why would he elevate Owen in this way if he hadn't already slipped up and punished him? Yeah. But also the fact that he has a name named Owen might not make him unnamed. So maybe you should have thought about that before you wrote the entire paragraph. What am I referring to? Ben's idea, Preston's. Oh, okay. So, 3 a.m. Funny thing about 3 a.m. Mostly it was Preston's doing, and I was just like, "Hey, I want a bot that spans the server." And Preston said, "Okay, well, follow this code, and you will have the bot." And the other variations were just made off of that. Yeah. Again, keep that in mind for later. It gets pretty interesting. So, breakneck speeds continuously at 3 a.m. in the morning. It was more commonly at 3 p.m. because it was just more convenient. So, points to revisionist history, I guess. Also, doesn't mention other variants of 3 a.m. It's kind of cringe. You say M-mast when you should have said A-mast. That's probably minus 5 grades. In secrecy to destroy the divine intervention. I didn't destroy it. I didn't completely obliterate it. It just sort of like took away its ability to do stuff. Which I mean it's still a living being. It just can't post or delete or okay, so he would set it up as a monument. Interesting wording. That's kind of interesting wording for lock the entire server against the people's wishes. And also, you know that whole lost generation bit? That's what we have to remember. The very freedom that is, forget it. I'll just put up, I'll put up text saying explicitly why it's so interesting. Anyway. Back to this page, which we haven't done yet. You want to preserve the history, which is funny because the archives are also swept under the rug in this entire paragraph. Don't remember which state of mind I was in when I was writing it, but it was probably a pretty good one. History and Game Club preserved. However, one day Ben and Cooper lost their ways.
You stupid.
They struck out like spoiled children, complaining about their inability to have. Blah, blah, blah. But you see, Preston also rage quit from the other servers, so. It set up a democracy modeled off of the original concept. The original concept did not have mob vote. Fun fact. So it's not really based off of that.
What's 9 plus 10?
Hadn't been a Cooper not learning the lesson. He wouldn't be allowed dictator. No one be allowed dictator either. But you see, the thing here is that he never really gave up his own dictator role. So it's kind of him just saying, "Hey, I'm only dictator and blah blah woohoo, power hungry drip." Yeah.
21.
So we need. Anyway, Cooper wouldn't activate his phone. Cameron would express repressed valid expression, as would Preston.
You
Cameron
stupid.
would be corrupted by the power, as would Preston. And Owen was like Cameron, as is Preston.
8.
Well, the people. Okay. This sort of copies the other one, so I've also copied the critique and multiplied it by 2.
21.
Oh, this is part of the previous story. Up until this point, the world hangs on balance between sanity and the peace the chosen people deserve. Will the forces of chaos address this win? Only time will tell. Sure, but we'll go with that. Overall, I think I gave this a D-, but with a bit more work, it could be a D+. But you know, I wouldn't be holding my breath. I'm sorry. It's just I tried to be objective in all these, you know. But besides this whole writing, I also kind of had an issue with this. Actually, not this itself, but you know, the video that came before it. This edit actually smooths out a lot of the problems. So we'll just go over that now.
Didn't you mean at the Faith Bible High School?
Simply saying Faith Bible High School is actually more grammatically correct.
A thriving friend group grew.
Thriving? Don't you mean sucky?
Seems like we have an equestrian hater on our hands.
The server needed to comply with the school's policies.
Nope. No, it didn't.
I mean, technically no, but we just sort of did it anyway, so it kind of counts. I don't know, points to both.
Anti-authoritarian would be the wrong framing for what we were looking for, actually.
It is exposing the hypocrisies and flaws of the authorities on the server, thus anti-authoritarian.
We'll call it by the future name, Sonic 2 Fan Club.
No, you won't.
Yes, I will. Fan Club is a simple shortening of Sonic 2 Fan Club, so I won't have to say the full thing. Get absolutely pranked.
Actually, Ben was more of a dictator than I was, because I did nothing, and then Ben actually took action against one of my bots.
I mean, I guess that is the case if you're just looking at the Fan Club, but if you zoom out to the bigger picture, it actually gets a bit more interesting.
Preston, on the other hand, was interested in a different kind of legacy. He
No, I'm just interested in it's funny.
It's actually not that funny.
wanted to collect the information of the friend group and display it for those interested to view.
No, just the friend group.
I mean, the friend group would be the only ones interested to view. Except for hackers. They could also view it, and you really didn't do anything to stop them. So what you're saying is you wanted to give all their data to the hackers. Okay, minus 300 points to classical. My goodness.
This created a contentious debate, as
Not really.
Kinda did.
Preston owned the server Shipfight, based
And Cooper.
It sounds like you're saying you owned Cooper. Didn't know you supported slavery.
to give different people power.
No, to give the people power.
Not everyone at once. Hence, different people.
Who made another equality server.
What they mean to say is they made a dictator server. That's it.
Wow, look at all this lack of default permissions. I would really hate to be the citizen living under these clearly restrictive human beings.
Well, really, Ben's server was dead on arrival, where mine fizzled out over a course of like 2 months.
True statement, but it looks like you were going to take 2 Gagaplex away from Classical, but you ended up taking it away from Revisionist instead. You know what? I'll just correct the mistake for you. There you go.
Check out 3 AM versus Divine Intervention.
Not the most accurate, because there's a lack of the other bots that Johnny made, and there's only one 3 AM bot.
Consider the game a snapshot of a hyper-specific chapter in the war. Though I could make more chapters in the future. Which is why I'd like to announce the Kickstarter campaign for the Bot Wars The Full True Story. Head on over to the link in the description to donate today.
Ew, gross! Oh my gosh, disgusting. Ew, America. Gross. Ugh.
Oh hey, the mistake happened again.
After fighting for freedom for so long on Equestrian, Preston tragically became power hungry.
Incorrect, we weren't using Equestrian at the time, except to post dead channel memes, which was really annoying to get pinged on it. And since I had control, I just turned it off.
Actually, Preston, here's how I remember it going. So, Cooper wanted to bring back Equestrian, Cameron wouldn't give rights, and Cooper retaliated by deeming the chat quote-unquote dead and posting as such. Preston scooped up Equestrian and wouldn't budge. Cooper said, "What the heck, man?" and Preston just doubled down by locking the server. Also, pretty much none of the dead chat posts were at everyone, so he could have just changed the notification defaults. And also, me and Preston joined in the posting after a while.
Preston had to suck it up and open the Equestrian back to the public.
I always wanted to use Equestrian as our actual server.
Proof?
Adding fuel to the debate, he converted.
I think you missed an error there, Ben.
That was left in on purpose. It gives the narration more character. I knew that the audience would feel detached from the narration from me smoothing it to all perfection, so I just left little bits of humanity in there. I'm going in and out of the CinemaSins voice. It's kind of cool.
Cooper founded the library, finally letting everyone get the more accurate view.
There are no standards to the library at all.
You say this as if there are standards in the archives. They are known as able to hold each other accountable. With only one poster, it's easier for biases to slip in. But with multiple posters, the truth can be found through what is shared between posts. Triangulation is a method used to increase the credibility and validity of research findings. Credibility refers to the trustworthiness of how believable a study is. Validity is
It showed the server Preston truly wanted, where one person has power and the people only get a fraction of the rights they deserve.
No.
Yes.
They both organized the walkout of the Equestrian Club.
No, it wasn't a walkout. I didn't walk anywhere.
Well, actually, Preston, we did this during a visit to Woo, so we all did physically walk to my car, and also you and Cooper walked back to the apartment. So got him. Got him good.
I'd say everything went perfectly how I intended it, so actually, yeah, it is perfect.
Wow, so you wanted all of the Equestrian history to be nuked. Actually, that makes kind of sense. You know, to have the server be nuked, so you could say, "Oh, that's what happens if I give you people rights." It's pretty manipulative, but it's actually a kind of a high IQ move. So,
And would occasionally flex his dictator muscles.
Well, if I hadn't, Johnny would have soft-launched the server, so my bad.
Actually, that's a pretty fair point. It's just kind of awkward that none of the other people have the power to restore the server from a crisis like this, or do anything that you can do without being voted in.
He couldn't even be banned. Cringe!
I fixed that issue.
I'll believe it when I see it. You have the power. You have the alts.
There was still a debate on whether or not alts ban. You used to.
It was less of a debate and more Ben forcing his will on everybody else, because, you know, he cares about freedom and everything does, right, guys?
My actions got people to think and turn it into a debate, with changes in the system resulting from it. Also, my philosophy on Discord is all about, like, all additions and few subtractions, which, hey, lines up with my sending the alt war was pretty good.
Who's Joe?
Joanna. Boundaries, as he says.
You can't do Cooper like that. I mean, like, he has ADHD. You expect him to have, like, enough focus to type boundaries properly then? That's pretty ableist, not gonna lie.
No offense meant, just going for 100% script accuracy. And also, I am very likely to have ADHD myself, as I have many of the symptoms, even though I have not put any effort to get a diagnosis. So it's physically impossible for me to be ableist. That's the word that I'm trying to say. Okay.
But it looks like Preston's trying to use his chainsaw to get Cameron's bone out of his arm so he can use it as some sort of weapon.
Why would you need to get the bone when you already have a chainsaw? Gosh, Preston, maybe you should have thought about that.
I guess Ben. Oh, what's Ben doing? Ben, you've already won the game. You don't need.
I don't know who this contestant is supposed to be, but it's clearly more civilized than that. Just a general vibe I got from him. The video is titled I Guess a Nuke, but it clearly shows a nuke in the video. You could have just titled it A Nuke without having to guess anything. Jeez. Wow, wasn't that a really cool video and a necessary one to be made? Anyway, tune in next time where I break the chain completely by not uploading. See you then. I'm filming on 3DS.